Welcome, Kathleen. Thanks for joining me today. This is my podcast. I think you are my second podcastee, if that's a thing. I wanted to get the opportunity to have a chat to you about what you do and your books especially. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And by the way, we did have a really great lunch, and so we should be in talkative mood. Hopefully, we didn't expend all the conversation points while we're having lunch. But thank you very much, and once again, thanks for coming. Now we're going to talk about your recent, career as an author. Now, I must admit that I've known you for, I think, 7 years now.
About that, yeah.
Yeah, time flies. And obviously we were colleagues at work. We all have our passions that we've been doing in our spare time. This is my passion with, obviously...
I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah. And we'll talk about mayhem and madness and the cover and the romance part of it later. But it's got nothing to do with Kathleen and I. Well, my passion obviously is gadgets and technology. I didn't think I found out about your writing passion or what you were doing in your own time until the book was nearly done. So I think that was my introduction to you writing, and I was pleasantly surprised because usually, obviously in a day-to-day office working environment, you tend to just think about your own thing, think about work, and then you go home and you just don't think about people at work.
That's true.
And so it was a pleasant surprise. But I want to sort of talk to you a little bit about your story. And I guess some of the stories that you've written, both books at this point in time, Mayhem and Madness and Mayhem and Monsters, are based in a rural town, or
the Mayhem and Madness is actually based in North Sydney, and the Mayhem and Monsters is made up it's in a made-up town, a country town, small country town. But
you grew up in a small country town, or
I did indeed, yes.
And so tell me about that. I mean, I have no, context when it comes to that. I grew up in South America, but in a city, and then I moved to Sydney. And I live in a city. So, I mean, the whole country life, is another world for me. But what was it like growing up in country Australia?
Well, for me, I grew up on a farm in a small country town out in the Central West, so Parkes and also Forbes. So I did my schooling in Forbes. Being on the farm, I was kind of removed from a lot of my friends on the weekends and school holidays, unless we, did sleepovers, because it was just too far to go in for weekend catch-ups. We had a lot of animals. We had a lot of really funny animals on the farm over the years. So just as an example, we had a pig. We had a pet pig, Billy the pig. He was just absolutely amazing, but Billy ended up being a female in the end.
Oh, no.
Not very good farmers not to figure that out up front. But Billy the pig was a fantastic guard dog, wouldn't let anyone in the yard. So he was a real character, absolute character. And then we had this little Shetland pony. Can I swear on?
Yeah, you can. This is adult.
Was a shit of a horse. He was an absolute little bastard. So I don't know too many people who have had Shetland ponies. He was the first one that I had actually come across, but he had an attitude twice as wide as his very ample ass. Seriously, he had an attitude. When we moved, we ended up moving back in town. We took the Shetland pony back in with us. The little things that he would do. So you'd put the saddle on him and he'd bloat and he'd blow up his belly so that when you went to get on his back, it would fall underneath his belly, and so you would have nowhere to go. And you get your foot caught in a stirrup, and so he'd hop around in a circle, and so you'd be hopping around with him, and then he'd be nipping at you and biting you while you're trying to get on his back, things like that. Horrible little horse. But then when we got back in town and we had people around for drinks one night for Christmas, he decided to start drinking with us. So he used to pick up the beer bottles, upend them, and drink the beer.
I thought only Mr. Ed could do that.
No, this one could too. Yeah, but obviously being in town, we couldn't keep the horse, so we gave him to someone else. But yeah, look, growing up in the on the farm was fantastic. We had a lot of fun, had motorbikes. We had a lot of freedom as kids. The people in the country towns were just amazing. Everyone looks out for each other. The friends that you have in school, you keep for life. There's something about growing up in a country town or having friends in a country town that you just bond with forever, and that's really special. I've still got almost all of my friends from high school. I still keep in contact with them, so it's really, really nice in that respect.
And I've got one, so yeah, so that goes to show how different different worlds altogether. So obviously when the sun went down, all the outdoor activities and fun and games sort of stopped. Obviously, you couldn't be out till late and things like that. And how did you spend time when you weren't enjoying the freedom?
Yeah, look, personally, I've always been someone who has a very, very active imagination, and so I can lose myself in my head very easily, and I quite often do even now. I can amuse myself very easily with just imagining things. We used to read a lot on the farm as well. My mum was always into romance books, so my sister and I always had a nose in one of her books, but mostly it was just losing myself with the imagination.
And is this where maybe the spark of writing, did you ever sort of think at a youthful age that this could be something that you wanted to give it a go?
Probably not until late teenage years. When I was around 16, I started writing poetry, and like any teenage going through their angst,
Yeah, that's right.
hormonal years, I did quite a lot of poetry, and I used to do it on an old typewriter because we didn't have the laptops back then. And I used to give it to my mother, who used to take it to the hospital. She was a nurse, and she used to love showing it around. And then in one of my little hormonal fits, I tore it all up.
That's right.
So I really regret doing that, because it would be nice to look back now on what I'd written then and the style of writing that I would have done then. But that was probably my first foray into writing, was the poetry as a teenager.
So that Shetland pony, you got some habits from from him.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't the only one with an attitude.
They say pets and their owners have some commonalities.
Yeah, you're probably right. But I don't bite.
So obviously the spark was there, and then obviously as you sort of grew up and then the real world came, so you decided to move to the big smoke. I mean, was that a conscious decision that you wanted to do or did love bring you to the city?
It was love, yes. So my husband, who was my boyfriend back then, got a job in the water board here in Sydney, so I moved to Sydney with him. My first week in working in Sydney, man, I was the biggest country bumpkin you would ever come across. So can I share with you my first day?
Please.
So we lived in Kensington.
Mm-hmm.
Had to take myself way back about 25 years there. So Kensington was the first place that we lived in. So I did a dry run on the bus and the train to get to North Sydney, which is where my job was. And that was the only time that I ever did that run. And so on day one, I managed to get into the office. I was so stressed out, I ended up with a headache and I vomited in my shoe. So I ended up walking around with vomit in my shoe for the day. I walked into what I thought was an exit staircase, but it was a fire exit. Got stuck in the fire escape. I had to pound on the door and wait for someone for about half an hour to hear me and come and let me out. I was too scared to walk around to cross the road, so I just walked around the block at lunchtime because I thought I would get lost. On the way home, I did get lost. So I was at Town Hall Station trying to figure out what train to catch to get me the rest of the way home. And a complete stranger came up and said, "Oh, sweetie, you look lost. Are you okay? Can I help you?" And I got home and my husband said at the time, "So how was your first day?" And it was a case of, well...
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
And what is that smell?
Pretty much.
So I guess that's a coping mechanism of vomiting in your shoe. It must be a country thing.
Well, I don't know about that, but it took me a while to get the country out.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, so it would have been, obviously, I came from Latin America, or Chile to Sydney, and obviously there was miles apart, infrastructure and things like that. And I was wowed by the place because I never seen paved roads before. But but it was the same thing for you, where it was larger than life?
Absolutely. So when I grew up, we didn't have traffic lights in town. So if we wanted a traffic light just to drive through and wait for it to turn red, we had to drive 100 k's to Orange to do it. If we wanted McDonald's or KFC, we had to drive 100 k's to do it. So it was a very small, very quiet country town. And in fact, we used to do stupid things, like as you do, to amuse yourself. So a friend and I would drive up to the top of like a lookout mountain, and we would just randomly select a light in the town and say, okay, let's go find that one. Spend an hour trying to find a light. You're never going to find it, but what else do you do in a small country town?
That's right.
It's very quiet and you're too young to go drinking.
Yeah, and it's there. We need to, discover. So, yeah, I totally sort of get that. And obviously it's all about the adventure, growing up and trying to do things. So you move forward, and then you sort of in the city. Your husband's got a job that's keeping him busy. You also get the job doing a bit of commuting. There's still no writing in this part, apart from the poems you tried and it went away. But then obviously real life took over, just like everyone else.
And really the only writing that I did was with work. I'd do newsletters or whatever it was that I was doing with work. So any opportunity that I have to do something creative in the office, I would definitely put my hand up. But as far as creative writing for novels, that didn't start until about 10 years ago.
Yeah. And I was reading in your bio on your website that it started off primarily as a time killer, because you were waiting for your son to do his soccer practice, and you would it was pen and paper back when you first started.
No, I had a laptop then, so just on the side of the soccer field, waiting for him to finish his soccer. And
obviously mayhem and madness was what you envisaged. Was that part of your mind's eye? Is that what you had?
No, that kind of came about in a very mishmash way. So how I got into it was I decided that I did want to take up writing. About 10 or 11 years ago, I lost my brother-in-law, and when he died, someone mentioned to me someone should write, some of the things that he did in his life, because he was a larger-than-life character. Something funny was always happening, and he had the gift of the gab. The way that he would tell a story would have you in stitches every single time. So when someone suggested that, I said, yeah, I'll definitely do that. It's my way of coping with it, and it was something for the family as well. So after I did that, that kind of triggered my desire to write more. So I did a 6-week online creative writing course, and part of the assignment, for the assignment, some of the chapters that I've used in here and some of the characters were actually my assignment that I had created, and I thought, it was critiqued already. Why not use it?
That's right.
So I more or less built the storyline around that. And the way that I wrote it was that I write a lot of humour. So the humorous parts of the book were what I wrote first, and then I came back and I put the romantic portion in it. I suffered from a lot of migraines at the time, so I had to put the book down for a couple of years. Chronic migraines just... you can't be creative when you're sick all of the time like that. So I put the book down, and when I came back to it, it was actually very interesting that the style of writing that I was doing for the romance side of it, it was incredibly obvious that I was uncomfortable writing it, and it came through that way. So when I saw that, and I thought, I can't release that, it was obvious that I had envisaged people that I know reading it and then wondering where I was getting this storyline from and what they would think of me, and that came across. So I ended up having to rewrite that whole book because I had to learn to get over myself really quickly and write it how I would want to read it myself. And so when I came to that realisation, I was able to actually write it properly.
Is it, you think, country sensibilities maybe?
No, I think it was just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was probably being somewhat of a prude.
Yeah. But I guess it's because you are writing it for yourself and maybe it was because you weren't satisfied with what you were trying to portray and the language you were using.
Yeah, look, quite possibly. I'm a very introverted sort of person, fairly vanilla, I guess. And my characters are the polar opposite of what I am. So that I had a lot of fun in creating that. And again, once I got over the whole, God, what people are going to think of me scenario, it made it a lot easier to, fulfill the characters to how they were meant to be.
Yeah. But, we are going to touch on this, but you mentioned that maybe romance is not your forte.
I love romantic comedies to read, and I hated writing it. I had to get a story to fit in with the humour part of it, and it made the most sense to do the romantic side of it. I love the story, and I love the storyline, and I love how it worked out, but I don't know that it's something that I would write again. Purely because the way that I'm writing now has a lot more serious background to it. So I'm trying different writing styles at the moment.
Yes. So I read the review of Mayhem and Monsters, and it did take a turn. So obviously less romance, a lot more serious subject matter regarding what's happening in the town. And
yeah, so how that came about was in the first book, The Mayhem and Madness, one of the side characters, Derek, was a cross-dresser. He wasn't gay, he had a wife, but he hid it from the wife, and it didn't come out until the end of the story. And I always thought through writing the book, I wonder what his story actually is. How did he get to be how he is? And how is it that he's cross-dressing but he's not gay? Because, you usually associate one with the other. So I thought I would really like to do his story. So this is his story. Now, in the Mayhem and Monsters, he had a very violent upbringing, domestic abuse. His uncle, his mum and dad died when he was very young, so his aunt and uncle raised him. So he had to suffer through the domestic abuse, and no one in the town knew about it. It's quite often with domestic abuse, it is a very hidden, nasty thing that happens. So it was his story on moving on and finding acceptance for himself, why he cross-dresses, the fact that he's comfortable with it. He's a barrister, so he's very successful in his career with what he does legally. But it's also how his aunt portrays herself within the story, how she manages to cope and pull herself through as a survivor, and other characters in the small town as well. Yeah,
so it's sort of bringing out more real world context, if you can put it that way. How did you choose which topic you wanted to tackle? I know this was purely a connection between the original book, and then you sort of made that tie between that character, which wasn't a main character. But then obviously you had to build this sort of crisis around this character.
Yeah, it kind of just fit for how I wanted the storyline to go. But I also wanted, I guess, to a certain extent, talk about the domestic abuse that does happen in any town, in any city. Behind closed doors, you never really know what's going on. So I guess it was an opportunity to portray that. But I was very careful in the book not to bring the whole book down to being all doom and gloom. There is a lot of humour in the book, so I have lightened it, but I was also very careful not to downplay the seriousness of the issue itself.
Yes. So there is a goat. Maybe is that the reincarnation of the pig you had when you were a child?
No, actually, the goat the goat came about when I was, again, a teenager. When I was about 17, I was driving out to a small farm to pick up a friend. We were going out somewhere, and I get out to the farm, And she's got her car up on Jack's, and she's underneath it. And I said, "What are you doing? Is everything okay?" She said, "Oh, I've run over the bloody goat." And I was really worried about the goat. So she pulls his goat out and he shakes his head and he's grumbling and he just runs off down the paddock. She said, "Okay, let's go." So it's something that she did on a fairly regular basis. And so for some reason I thought of that, and I thought I can bring the goat in and use that as an example. Obviously I embellished it and changed it around a little bit. But the goat was actually a really funny character to write.
Yeah. And it's usually that, I guess, the humour, the ongoing sort of thread of that in the story that sometimes does break it up, and I guess the mechanism that you use there was quite clever, and I think personally goats are creepy. Their eyeballs just like and the way they approach you, and they sort of don't watch your personal space. I've had bad experiences with goats, so
Sorry.
yeah. I am not getting this book because of the goat cover. So that's kind of clever. So obviously the new book is in the works, and there's not going to be This is a spoiler-free podcast, but how is the flow going to go? Is it going to be...
Yeah, so that one is going to be set in the same mythical small town, using the same characters, with the exception, I don't think I'll bring Nena back into this one because I can't really find a place for her in this one, even though Nena seems to be everyone's favourite in these two books. But I'm using a couple of the characters again, and she will have a background where she used to see a psychologist, and the psychologist has done a number on her, makes her believe things that she hasn't actually done, and he becomes her stalker and ends up finding her in town and making the townsfolk all believe that what he's saying is true and what she's saying is untrue. So it's her way of pushing past that, finding herself and making everyone accept that this is truth, and that just because you're in a very powerful position, that you really shouldn't be taking advantage of your position like that some people do. Yeah,
and absolutely. And we've seen so many different cases of that happening in the real world. I'm a big fan of true crime, and obviously you can go down a very deep rabbit hole when you start sort of watching shows or reading books about that sort of thing. And it is a very interesting sort of area to investigate, especially when you somebody in trust, whether they're teachers or police or whatever. So that's good. And then obviously building that same sort of town vibe that you've got. I like it because I'm a big Stephen King fan, and I love the fact that Derry, his mythical town somewhere in the east coast of Maine, is that center, that nexus, and hopefully we'll see. You got the tie-ins. Do you see an overall arch, like in the way that you're envisaging the next book and maybe future books when they come?
The fourth book, possibly. I actually had a dream about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and when I woke up, I thought that would be a fantastic sequel to this book. So I wrote it all down, and it means that when I write the third book, I can allow for that progression into the fourth book, which had I not had the dream, I obviously wouldn't have been able to do it that way. So, look, book 3 and book 4, I have in my mind what I want to do. Past that, who knows?
Yeah, that's great. But that's good because, obviously you're seeing this universe starting to slowly develop and grow. I'm sure the fans of your first couple of books and people that haven't read them and probably will find you are always, very keen to invest into something that's going to have a continual flow.
Yeah, and yes, I do have a continual flow in that you recognise the characters, but each book is definitely a standalone book. You don't have to read the first one to read the second, for example. Yeah,
that's really good because that gives it that nice hiatus between one story and the next, and then it just brings up different. Challenges for the characters and whatever. I'm actually a big fan of some books, and so much so that I'll practically binge read them or hear them when I'm short of time, and I get so sad when I catch up to where the the writer is up to, and I have to wait another 12 months or more for the next book. And to me, it's like, no, you become so invested.
Yes.
But I always remember the story. When I was a kid, I was a big fan of Tolkien. And between one book in The Lord of the Rings and the other, you had to wait 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's amazing that, you would have actually, waited that long. But I guess it was all worth it in the end. I mean, it's been so successful. So you told me that, obviously originally you started writing and it was something to pass the time and maybe a little bit of a commitment to a family member. Then obviously you wrote the first book. It took you how long to write the first book?
6 years.
6 years, right?
Yeah.
But then the second book only took?
About 12 months.
12 months.
Yeah.
So obviously you're on a roll.
I was on a roll. And because the first book, I would do a chapter here and then a chapter there. I could go from chapter 2 and then write chapter 8 and then chapter 6, and then I'd have to fill in the little bits in the between, and then I'd realise I'd missed something, and then I'd have to rewrite it again. And I had no idea what I was doing. And just mashing it all together and then having to rewrite it. So, and getting myself in a position where I was comfortable enough to start letting other people read it and knowing that it was okay to, actually release out there in a book format. The second one, I kind of had in mind what I wanted. So I knew the start and I knew the finish and I knew a little bit in between. So it was peaks and troughs. So I knew all of my peaks and then I just had to put in the troughs, which is like the background stories and the building of the book and the characters. And so I just started at page 1 and then just went from there. And so it kind of flowed a lot easier. I do find when I write that the conversations that the characters have and the humour just tends to flow, and that's very organic, and I tend not to go back and do any of those because they otherwise they become overworked. But the rest of it is something that I really have to put a lot of effort into. And is that repertoire between characters in the book and the humour, are you drawing on some of that sort of country sort of humour or is it just things that you've maybe look, it's probably my humour. Yes, it is a very country humour. A lot of people in the country tend to have a very dry sense of humour, and that's me all over. So if you like the humour in the books, you'll like me, basically, because that's me. I don't think that humour is something that you can learn to write. You either have it or you don't.
No, absolutely. And it's funny because when I met you in at work, and you had a very serious job. And when I found out you wrote a romantic comedy, to me was like, whoa, because obviously we sort of shelter ourselves when we're in different environments, and to me that was very surprising. So that was that was very good. I think
that probably comes down to the fact too that I am very much an introvert, and I don't always show a lot of my humour to a lot of people unless I know them well. And I guess putting myself out there in the book was a huge deal for me.
As opposed to the other guy who just maybe shares a bit too much.
Well, there is that one.
And so that's gotten me into trouble. We won't talk about that in this podcast. But so you mentioned too that obviously you go through and sometimes you have these migraine. And I know you probably still have them from time to time, and that sort of kills that momentum of being able to write. What's your coping mechanism? I think a lot of people are in a similar situation.
I read. I've always got my nose in a book. I always make notes. But I'm a big reader. That's my coping mechanism. But just as an example, even though I'm reading and not necessarily writing, I am still progressing with the book in a certain way. So just as an example, so when I read a lot, I will always make notes of words or a couple of little phrases that I think, that's something that I can make use of or, modify it slightly for my books. So when you're writing, you could have in a book 100 different times that someone has walked across the room. You can't describe it 100 different times in the same way. So it is very hard to change up how you describe things that happen on a regular basis within your book, which is why when I write, I'm always writing down little notes. And one instance really threw me, actually. So it was about 6 months ago. I was reading a book and I had read the phrase "crawl across the carpet," something very, innocuous. It was a very, very tame type thing. So I thought, okay, I'll write that down. Got my iPad out, started writing notes, and within an hour, I had written a whole chapter of a rape scene, and it came from nowhere. And my muse just completely took over. I wasn't thinking of writing. I hadn't been thinking of being raped. I didn't know anyone who had been raped. I'm fortunate enough that I've never been. It's something that hadn't been on the news. So it wasn't something that was in my mind. And after I finished it, I felt really creepy for the rest of the day. I was thinking, where on earth did that come from? And when I read back the work that I'd done, I thought, that's probably one of the best pieces I've ever written. Mm-hmm. And I kind of lost myself to the point where I didn't even really remember writing it. So when your muse takes over, headache or no headache, you just let it flow.
Yeah. So then obviously that sort of the juices start flowing, and you get into that zone that creative people tend to be in. When do you stop? I mean, do you sort of let it just do its course? And do you have a lot of late nights?
Yeah, so I will, like I said, I'll go through months of not touching a book, and then I'll go through months of just doing nothing but. So every free minute I'll be writing. It'll just take its course, basically. And then while I have a bit of a mental block, or if I have a bit of a mental block, I'll go back and review some of my other work. So while I'm still in the writing phase, I swap and change. So I'm not one of those writers that just writes, and then goes back and at the very end and edits.
Yep.
I'll swap and change it depending on how I'm feeling at the time.
Yeah, but you did also tell me that you set yourself a date. Like if you have a deadline in mind, it motivates you more than just having an open
Only if I
schedule.
tell people what that deadline is.
Okay.
If I don't tell people,
I'm going to have a look at the website. Coming soon, 2021. Okay,
Yeah.
You bought yourself a bit of time.
Yeah, I can easily change that. That's a typo.
Well, there shouldn't be any COVID excuses about next year.
No, with my last book, I made a point of putting Facebook posts out to my friends saying this is coming, and I made sure that I put dates and months, with the expected timing, and that was my trigger, I guess, to try to meet those deadlines.
Yeah. How do you find using social media and being an author? I know you went through a stage of setting up your page and doing things like that. Do you think it's a good thing to have this open sort of communication with the fan base?
Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic thing, and it's something that I don't do enough of. It's something that I haven't really started yet. I haven't promoted my books, really. I did a library talk in Parks once, and that was fantastic. I love that. They gave me so much support, but I haven't really done anything else. The social media is excellent. You do tend to get lost. I'm old school in that I don't like to learn new programs.
Yeah.
And so Facebook, for me, is something I've really only been doing for the past 4 years. But I love it. But I haven't used any other platforms yet other than having a website available, which, people will go and look for me if they know me, but it's not exactly social media.
Yeah. Because I'm a bit of a fanboy sometimes too. When I find an author that I'm familiar with, I do ping them, maybe because I've got a question, or sometimes nerdy enough to say thank you when you sort of enjoy the book, or when they kill off a character, they because how dare you kill off that character? But I have been surprised at times that I've written to authors and they write back, and it's the coolest thing when those universes collide, where in the old days it would have been someone that was unreachable. Maybe you could have sent the publisher a letter to pass on to whatever, but not like this instant communication with authors, which is pretty cool. But I guess it has its downsides too, because there's another level of responsibility you've got now because you have to answer back.
Yeah. I think with a lot of indie authors too, there's so many indie authors out there. Social media is just drowning in indie authors. So it's really hard to get yourself noticed and be found by other people.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to talk about publishing in a second, but there are also those links or those comments that people do on the publishing sites like Amazon and things like that, and you also have to keep an eye on that as well, right?
You do, and it's really hard to get people to leave comments and reviews on places like Amazon and Goodreads. Authors live by those reviews. The more reviews that you get, particularly in Amazon, means more sales, and it's to do with the algorithms. And the algorithms are a really funny thing. So when I first published my first book, within about 2 weeks, I was in the top 100 best authors for new releases. And my husband actually found it and was like, oh, fantastic. How did that happen? That's amazing. I must have gotten a lot of sales. But because of the algorithms and the area that my book was in, I ended up finding out that it was 6 sales. But hell, I can say that I was in the top 100 bestsellers list.
Yes.
And I was really there. But the algorithms, I just haven't figured out. And look, to be honest, one day I will sit down and actually try to work it out.
I think they're the best kept secrets. I know that a couple of companies here in Australia are trying to get a look into the Google algorithm, but I guess that's what keeps it sort of, people asking, how can I do better or how can I do that? But I think that you're never going to solve that mystery. But I think you're right. I think feedback is really important.
Definitely.
And having those people somehow rewarded for giving feedback. I don't know. I'm going to give you a tip. Maybe anyone that gives feedback, you give them like an excerpt of the next book.
Quite often you can't actually get back in contact with those people. If you know the person, great. I have been very fortunate in that my reviews have been all very positive, and they've been genuine reviews. I refuse to pay anyone to give me a review that's not genuine. If you don't like the book, fine. Don't leave me a horrible review by all means.
Yeah.
But leave a review based on what you truly believe in the book.
Yeah. And there are some people that will connect. I'm also a large consumer of books, and there's some books that will make that connection, and then you feel almost I wouldn't say obliged, but you feel that commitment to the author in order for them to continue doing that work. And I think it's really important.
Absolutely. And I've started leaving reviews for the books that I absolutely love. I won't do it for every single book that I read. I do try to read a lot of indie books where I can and leave reviews. But yeah, I definitely leave reviews for those books that I absolutely loved for that very reason.
Yeah. So indie, right? So independent, everything. I got some kids that do independent indie music. So obviously it's one avenue, because of that technology is facilitated for people to either become published or do the music or whatever. Now, in the old days, it would have been that traditional, you go to one of the big publishing houses and sort of get your book there. Is that when you first sort of had that finished copy of the first book, is that the way you went? Is that the way, or how did you navigate through that? Okay, I've got the product. How do I publish it?
Yeah, there's something that you have to do your research on, in which way you want to progress your books. If you wanted to go the traditional publishing route, it's incredibly difficult to get into. Very few authors are accepted as new authors to do that. It has its pros and cons. So some of the pros are that they get you into bookshops. That's probably the biggest one. They will try to promote the book for you. But a lot of the cons is that you actually get more per book than doing it yourself through Amazon. You get to control all of your rights. You can change it, modify it. You get to select your own cover. There's a lot more to it. And and the focus on managing it yourself is there, whereas it's taken out of your hands, and it could be 2 or 3 years. If you're lucky enough to get a publishing contract, it could be 2 or 3 years before you actually see the book.
And what would the advantages be of getting that publisher? I know, for example, doing it indie, you have full artistic rights, but doing it through a publishing house, you were mentioning that they probably would say, no, that cover's not going to work, and they would sort of take you through that.
Yeah, and they would probably take away a lot of your editing rights as well, depending on who you went with, of course. Not all of them would. The bigger houses, look, you're not going to get a foot in the door with the bigger houses. You would have to offer something that's truly unique that the marketplace hasn't seen, which isn't easy to do in this day and age.
That's true. I mean, they always say there's no such thing as a new story and a new method of telling it. And so it's really difficult, I guess, for an up-and-coming writer or someone that's thinking about doing it to sort of get that attention if they want to make publishing books or writing books their primary source of income, right?
Yes, but you have to be very careful with that. So when I went into publishing, or when I decided to publish my book, I went in with absolutely no expectations that I would get any sales whatsoever. And that way I wasn't going to be disappointed with whatever happened, any way, shape or form. Writers who I think are quite arrogant in believing that they've got the best book, that they should be taken up by a publishing agency, that they should be getting a lot of sales, and they're always going to come crashing down very quickly because you just don't get a lot of sales, which is where the publishing houses come in. So you would have to be a very successful author, and they would really want to have to really push your work for you to get all of those sales. One thing that we can't do as indies is get our books into a lot of the bookstores. That is a downside. But yeah, these authors who believe that they're going to be able to give up their day job and just write permanently and make a lot of money out of it, it's just not going to happen for them.
Yeah, but the sad reality is that bookstores are also in the decline. There's not that many out there as there were, let's say, 10 years ago, even 15 years ago.
Now, they are starting to come back.
So you go to the bookstore every once in a while and just stand there, kind of go,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You have to read this book. It's fantastic.
Best author ever.
Yeah. I don't know how I didn't find this before. Such a lovely goat.
Yeah.
So then, obviously, you. What about the things like the editing? Did you get someone to edit it for you?
For the first book, yes, because I wasn't one of those arrogant authors who believed it was the absolute best work ever. I actually went through an agency over in WA, and they did my cover and they did my blurb. Surprisingly, a blurb is really hard to write, and I struggled with that, so they helped me with that. I didn't want to edit the whole book because I just didn't have the cost to do it with everything else I was spending on the cover and etc. So they agreed to do 3 or 4 chapters for me to edit, and so then I would get a feel of whether it was a story that they would want to keep reading, whether my voice was strong in the way that I was writing. But if you don't have the experience, so I've worked in administration all my life, so I'm actually not too bad with doing editing and stuff like that. So I'm very comfortable with doing the editing. So I probably should pay for someone to do the editing to do it properly, but to be quite honest, I would rather spend that money on a decent cover and a decent blurb and do the editing myself.
Okay. So once you sort of get through that stage, then it's picking the electronic as well, like the Amazons. That means that. Did you do that yourself? Did you?
I didn't. With the third book, I definitely will. I'll do it all myself. So it can be a little bit tricky to get your formatting correct for online publishing, particularly your ebooks. It can be very frustrating to try to get that working properly to upload, and your PDF version as well. So places like Amazon will usually do a print on demand. At the moment, you have to do it from overseas, so that's not ideal. The way that I did my books is the same company in WA. I got them to upload it to Amazon and ebooks and a few other places. They formatted the book so that I was able to have a PDF, and they actually printed however many copies that I wanted. So people who wanted a physical book, family and friends, I was able to provide that to them.
Okay, and then if you ever need reprints, you can always order them.
Yeah, and the good thing about the company that I was dealing with is that there's no minimum numbers, so I don't have a shed full of boxes of books that I'm just never going to sell.
And that's the thing with, I guess, or the beauty of having on demand, and you can do on demand everything from T-shirts to whatever, and you just get the numbers you need, and it just I think it's great for the environment as well. You're right. I mean, the trees go into these things, but I mean I do appreciate a reading physical thing. I've been an audio listener since I've been a commuter, so for me that's how I consume them, because when I'm sent shopping to do my groceries, I'll just put my book on and I'll be doing that. So it's for me, it's like I feel productive because I'm doing what I like, which is reading, but also doing some chores at the same time. Have you ever considered doing yours audiobooks?
Not really. Audiobooks isn't something that I've personally gotten into. I know a lot of people love them. Maybe one day I'll look into the cost and the options around it, but it's not something that I've considered yet.
With a good microphone, you can do it yourself.
I'll come and see you later about that one.
You just have to do the voices. I'm sure you can get Nana done right, but I think everybody else.
And the goat.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure you can make a goat sound. We can dig one up from the internet. But some people have amazing range, and they can practically narrate a whole book doing the different voices. Now I think that's top dollar. I think you better start like in the bottom first.
Work my way up.
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to get one of those voice actors just yet. But that's great. So 2021, do you think so the book is more towards the end of the year?
Look, once I start it and once I get the flow of it, it'll probably take me 8 to 10 months to write, and then a couple of months to edit it and get it ready for publishing. I'm not in any rush with this one. I guess with the whole COVID thing, my thoughts have been doing renos around the house, to be honest. When you're sitting around, you're just picking things to pieces, so it's a perfect opportunity to fix things. But probably mid to late 2021.
Yeah, that's good. So, and then obviously, just keeping your fans aware using social media, and sort of hopefully when the lockdown sort of stops, you're planning to do any more like book readings, or maybe...
I think I may try to do some more library talks. I swore black and blue after the last one that I would never do another one, purely because the whole introvert thing, introverts don't do front and centre. When I got up on stage, or, got up in front of these many people who were in the audience, I thought, what the hell am I doing? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Once I calmed down, I really enjoyed it. Look, the people there were fantastic. The staff was fantastic. I had the deputy mayor there. She was so lovely and really encouraging. So it was a really positive experience, but really hard to do public speaking for the best of times, in the best of times, and for a lot of people. So I think that I could possibly do some more library talks around my hometown area, or where I live now, but keep them a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
Build them up.
Yeah, look, I think I know there's also a big fan base for these books club sort of things, where people sort of come in and sort of talk about books and have the sort of their take on whatever it is that they're reading. It's more, I guess, to sort of let people know in a face-to-face sort of way that I'm enjoying this. And I know in this digital world, it sounds so analog, but most of the books that I've enjoyed thoroughly have been word of mouth recommendations. Until you find someone that sort of has similar likes, and still in these type of clubs that people tend to gather in and say, by the way, I read this crime story, or I read this romance or whatever, and I absolutely rate it, then I think that experience becomes a lot more organic and sort of, and I feel that it lends to, that recommendation lends to a more of a successful read, because then you can get back and then you can talk to the person and say, guess what, that book you recommended was awesome, what did you feel about this? And I think that's the little bit that is missing in this new electronic
It is.
form.
And it all comes down to what people are enjoying reading. For me, it's about people enjoying the book. It's not about the sale for me, and it never has been, never will be. But it is all about the people enjoying the book. So when I first released my first book and I found out that people were giving the book to other people to read, originally I thought, well, there's a lost sale, thanks for that. But then I realised, no, that's actually a fantastic thing, because if they love the book so much that they've given it as a recommendation to someone else to read and then they've forwarded it to someone else, that's just grown my my readers base significantly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love that.
Yeah, and I was used to troll those secondhand bookstores, and I used to love it when you used to bring like 5 and then you get 1 back. Hopefully that 1 was worth the
Yes.
5, but that's all I could afford back in those days. But there is a lot of goodness when it comes to those recommendations, and those and kudos to those guys in the secondhand bookstores. I don't think they get enough credit because they always recommend the good books. Hey, so thank you very much. I think there's a million things we can talk about, and I really do want to maybe in the future get you back when you're getting closer to getting the new book out.
Sure.
And I'd love to talk about and see how the characters in the town and it's all progressed, and seeing how the sort of the story is unfolding. So I want to thank you again for coming and sort of talking to me.
Thanks
And hopefully
again
we
for
can do
having
it
me. It's
again.
been fantastic.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good luck with the next book. And for anyone looking for these books, you can get them on Amazon and iBookstore, Booktopia, and Vivid Publishing as well. So if you're wanting to get your hands on either the ebook or
Yeah, the Mayhem and Monsters isn't through Vivid, but the Mayhem and Madness definitely is.
Yeah.
But they can always contact me. I've got a few copies.
Yep, website, cool website, and obviously
Best
on
website.
and also on social media as well. So thanks, Kathleen.
Thank you.